I'm going to talk a bit about my experience starting Trellis Research and the business model of selling access to GitHub repositories. I'm going to take you through two parts. First of all, a very low-cost, scrappy way to get started selling access to GitHub repos, some tips around product and some of the pitfalls I've run into. And in the second half, when you get to a more advanced stage, I'll talk about automating access to GitHub repositories by spinning up a simple Flask server. In a kind of meta sense, I'm making available lifetime access for purchase to a GitHub repo that will allow you to configure a server in about 20 minutes. And I'll walk you through every step of the way in getting that set up. Even if you don't buy access to the GitHub repo, I think you can learn a few things about the way that I configure the automations. I'll talk first about simply selling. And I found it's really important to do the basics, and that's it. No overcomplication. And the second part, I'll talk about that automation. A few little points I want to make here. First is that all that matters is distribution. And I want to show you this tweet here from Daniel Vassallo on X, a recommended follow. Things you absolutely don't need to launch: an LLC, tax compliance, VAT handling, a merchant of record, terms and conditions, a privacy policy, a copyright notice. A big long list here. You could agree or disagree, but the key point comes at the end, which is things you absolutely need to launch, some way to bring attention to your product. And I think that's key because for all I'll talk about automation today, what has made the Trellis Research business work is that I found good fit on YouTube and I found a reasonable number of viewers, which it's much appreciated you're watching. But having some channel, it could be X, it could be a Substack, it could be Reddit, but having some channel that's going to allow you to get your content out is the most important thing if you're going to get on a journey. The second tip is to build something short and simple. I've spent sometimes maybe a month or two building products before launching them. And now I typically spend maybe about 1 day making a video and maybe about 1 week at most preparing. And I find that's a good time. I'm not able to predict which videos are exactly going to do well. But because I get these small chunks out, I get feedback and it helps guide me on which videos to make next. Also, if I do something that doesn't end up being that helpful, well, I haven't lost all that much time. So doing something short and simple is highly recommended. Third tip here is not to automate anything. I didn't have any automations on granting access until I think I was selling a few accesses to the repo per day. And I would just do it manually. So I'd put a Stripe payment link, which I'll show you in a moment. And when somebody would purchase it, I would say that access will be granted within 24 hours. Now I check my email maybe at least twice a day. So it would really be less than 12 hours. And you might think this would be a little annoying, and I'm sure it is. But customers tend to be quite patient, and I think that it's totally fine just for getting started to do everything manually. It also allows you more interaction with the customers, and that's a good thing, I think, to get feedback. The last thing I want to say here is around the idea of giving lifetime access. A lot of people are inundated with subscriptions nowadays, and I think that can be a bit overwhelming. People have a tendency to cancel. But furthermore, a subscription's not really aligned with the value when you sell access to a repo. The user is going to get a lot of value when they immediately get access, and then it's just kind of incremental value as you add more to the repo over time. And so I think it's more aligned to just sell lifetime access upfront when the customer gets the most value. And it is a big benefit because I add a lot of content to the repos over time, but this ends up being more of a marketing attraction. And so people feel they really get value because they get this lifetime access. And I think that lowers the barrier to people buying in the first place. This is inspired a lot by Tailwind. Tailwind provide modules for websites, these kind of pleasant module designs. You can see them even here on their pricing page that you can plug and play, and they sell everything forever. So they've been a big pioneer with this, and I think it's not a model that's probably right for everything, but well, clearly it isn't, but I think it's one that's worth considering. So I'm going to show you now, as part of simply selling, how I create a payment link, and this is all without any automation. So what I'll do is I'll start off and just type in here, new product. And let's say that I want to sell access to a new repo. I might put in a little logo here of Trellis, a description, and then I'll put in a price, say €99 here. It's going to be a one-time purchase. And then I'll just save the product. Now, once that product has been saved, I can create a payment link. So now my product is being created, and I'll create a payment link here. And what I think is useful now is often to ask the customer for their GitHub username. So I put in a custom field, and I'll say here, enter your GitHub. Enter your GitHub username. And I put in here something like EGJO blogs, just so there's an example. And the second thing I do is in the after payment screen, I replace the default message, which would just say thanks for your payment. And I say access will be granted within 24 hours. And that's pretty much it. I have a payment link, and this is ready now, in my case, to put up below a YouTube video or whatever channel you're using to disseminate word about your new product. And I just check my email then and grant access to users. Once I see a purchase, I might check my Stripe dashboard periodically. So that's the simple approach to selling. And I think you can get quite far just with that simple approach, probably until, as I said, a few sales per day. And then you feel like it's valuable to make the time delay shorter for customers. And also you maybe want to save time not having to manually grant access. And that's where it might be worth setting up some kind of an automation where you have a simple server and you catch webhooks from Stripe product sales. So when there's a sale of a product, it will send a webhook to your server. And then you use that webhook to grab which product was sold and to grab the GitHub ID or the GitHub username rather that was entered on the payment link. And then using that, you can grant access to GitHub. So I'll just show you very quickly some snippets of code so you have a sense for what that looks like. Here is the Stripe webhook. So you'll set up a Stripe webhook on your server, authenticate it, and you'll look for an event. So you'll get an event from the webhook. And with this event, you're going to look for checkout session completed. So the webhook will be set up to monitor checkout session completed events and then send webhooks to your server. And once you grab the checkout session completed, you're going to want to grab the GitHub username of the user. And then you want to dig in deeper and find the line items from the checkout session. And the reason you need the line items from the checkout session is because you need to know which product was purchased. So by fetching the line items, you're able to get the Stripe product IDs. And by comparing those product IDs to the products that you want to automate access for, you're able to identify to which repo the user needs to be granted access. So just to recap, we've grabbed the username from the webhook, the GitHub username. It's just in one of the fields of the session. And then we've grabbed from the line items, we've grabbed what the repo is, or the product ID rather, and using the product ID, matching that to the repos we want to automate, we're able to grant access to that repo using GitHub Grant Access. And I'll just show you what the GitHub Grant Access function looks like. So it's going to be something like this. Curl request to an API, to GitHub API, and to repos, and then to the repo owner, which for me is Trellis Research, and then the repo name, and then collaborators, and then GitHub ID. So this is the, well, it really should be called GitHub username because it's the username. And just one small other note is that you can specify the permission. So if you specify it as pull, that means that the users have got read requests. So people won't be able to write or mess up the repo, but they will be able to clone the repo and read everything, which is exactly what they need. So for the rest of the video, I want to show you a demo of setting up a server like this. I have made it available as a lifetime access product in the spirit of this video. It's a configurable Python and Flask server. You can get set up in about 20 minutes. I've provided lifetime access to those who purchase, including future improvements to this configurable server. And you can also, like any GitHub repo, you can post issues if you need some help with your own setup. And the beauty is if you set up your own server like this, you'll just be paying the Stripe commissions for your payments, and you won't be paying any other commissions to some kind of centralized marketplace. So let me now go through this. I'll head over to the repo itself and let me just escape. Let's go over to the repo, which is right here. There are a few things you're going to need. So you'll need a SendGrid account. A free tier is perfectly fine. You can do up to 100 emails per day. And you'll have to have authorized an email address to send from SendGrid. The second thing you need is a Stripe account. That will be to create products and payment links, just like I showed you. You'll grab the Stripe secret key and put that into the app. And you'll also see how to configure a webhook that will send events to your server. You'll also need a Heroku account. You will have to have a payment method registered, and using the lowest tier, I think it's $5 per month if you want to run an EcoDyno. Now you could just deploy this on an Amazon EC2 instance or any server instance. So that would be another option. Maybe that's even cheaper for you. I'm going to show Heroku today because it's really quick to deploy. And then of course you need a GitHub account. So before I go into the setup, let me just show you the experience that you'll have once your server is up and running. You're going to have a server that will be online and looks like this. Of course, this will be customized with your logo and your name. This doesn't necessarily have to be consumer facing. It's just for you to log in and manage your product links. So you can click on the login button and send an email to yourself. Note that you'll only be able to log in if you have set your email in the environment variable, so not anybody is able to log into the server. So I've just received a login link, so let me go to my email and I'll click on the link in my email to log in. Okay, I've just clicked on the link in my email and I'm logged in, and here you can see I can create product automations. The way that the access is automated is by looking for products in Stripe with a certain ID. So for example, we created this product here called a new repo, and this product, if I click, this product has a product ID. So I'm going to copy that and paste it in here. And then the GitHub repository is going to have a URL. So I'm going to put in the URL here. So github.com, Trellis Research, and then Mart. So this is the URL for this server repo that I'm selling. And I'm going to click on Create Automation. This means now that when somebody purchases the product with this ID through any product link I create, it's going to ensure that a webhook goes to this server, and which we need to set up in a moment. And when that webhook is received, access will be granted to this repo here. And you can at any moment decide to edit that automation, or you can delete it. And you can create many more automations here for different repositories if you're selling a few. So as I said, the Stripe webhook does need to be set up, but we're going to see that as we get to the setup of the server. I wanted to just show you this flow because this is the end state you'll be in once you have set up your server. So let's go through now from start to finish, setting up your own server with the help of Heroku. What you'll do first is clone the Trellis Mart repository. So I'm here in the app, and you'll see a file structure that looks like this. Here's the README. You'll need to have Python 3.5, pip, the Python package installer, and Git installed before you get started. And you need to have some server as well where you're going to deploy. As I said, I'm going to deploy using Heroku. So I've got a Heroku account set up and I've got a payment card on file. You can also run this server locally. There's instructions for that right down towards the bottom of this README file. So I've already cloned this repository here, and I've CD'd change directory into the Mart folder. And next up, I'm going to log into Heroku. So here I am in my terminal, and I'm just going to do Heroku. Now, if you don't have Heroku installed, you can install it with Homebrew using BrewTap. Or you can, on Windows, just download it from online. So when you do Heroku login, it's going to prompt you to press any key and then click login. And I'm already logged in, so I can just go back to my terminal here. Next up, I'm going to want to run this Heroku setup script. So I'm going to provide permission first to run this setup script here. And this setup script is going to let me set up my environment variables, including my API keys for SendGrid, for Stripe, and for GitHub. So to run this automated process, I'm going to just do chmod on that script, which provides permission to run the script. And then I'm going to run the script using /herokusetup.sh. And so now we're in the app creation stage. And this script will start off by setting up a Heroku app, which it has done already. It's called Mighty Bastion. I like that name. And the first question I'm being asked is the default sender address. So within SendGrid, you'll have to have set up authorization to send from this email. So I've set my email there. The next question here is to enter your SendGrid API key. So I'm going to go across in the browser and log into SendGrid. Let me just do that. Okay, I'm logged into SendGrid here, and I'm going to go to Settings and go down to API keys. And I'm going to create API key with restricted access. I need API keys, and I also need email sending, so mail sending. And I'll create a new key. I need a name, so I'm going to do YouTube demo key for Mart. And now I'll create. And I've copied that key, and heading back over to my terminal, I'll enter it in here. So that's my my SendGrid key. Next up is my Stripe key. Now I'm going to show you this in test mode. You can, of course, do this in production mode. But for now, I'm just going to do it in test mode. So I'll copy that Stripe secret key. I'll roll the key afterwards. And next, I think I'm going to be prompted to enter a webhook secret. Yeah. So here's where we need to direct the webhooks to the server, to the Heroku server. So here's the URL that my server is going to run at with Stripe webhook added at the end. So I'll go over to Stripe and I'm going to go to webhooks and then add endpoint, put the endpoint in here, YouTube vid. And I'm going to put the latest version of the API. And for events, I'm going to say checkout session completed. So it's going to be listening for checkout session completed events. And now I have a webhook that's configured to listen for checkout session completed events. And with that, I'm ready to add the endpoint. And now I can get my webhook secret. So Stripe is now going to send webhooks to this URL here. And the webhook secret is now available to be copied. This basically secures, so it's a way of the server knowing that the webhook is legitimate. So if somebody spoofs and sends a webhook to your server, to my server, I'm going to know that it's not a legitimate webhook because it doesn't have that webhook secret. And in fact, the content will be hashed with that webhook secret. So I'll need to validate it by using webhook secret. Okay, next up, I'll enter the GitHub token. So let me show you how this works by heading over to GitHub. In fact, I'm here. So you'll want to go to your settings. So just click on your profile picture, go to settings, then scroll down and go to developer settings. And under developer settings, personal access tokens, fine-grained tokens, and then generate new token. So here I need to authorize just with my GitHub. So we put in YouTube test and I'll just make it expire. And now you want to choose the resource owner. I want to provide access to a repo within Trellis Research. So I've selected that. And I only want to provide access to Trellis Mart, the repo Mart. So I've selected that. And in terms of repo positions, I need to allow administration, read and write, because this allows me to add users with read or write permissions. And that will leave me with an overview of 2 permissions. There's the default metadata permission and then the access, read and write for administration. So with that, I'll generate the token, copy that token, and put it in here. And now all of the environment variables are being set up on Heroku, and the app is being built. And by the end of this build, we'll just have a URL that we're ready to access the app on. And it looks like the app has just been deployed and can be accessed here. So I'm going to hold down on Command and open up the app. So first step is to log in. I'm going to put in my email. And now I'm just going through the same process as before. I've just logged in and I'll show you this process very quickly. So we'll go over to the payment link that we had set up and grab again that product ID from here and the GitHub repository URL. And save that, create that automation. So that automation is ready now, and I can grab the payment link. So let's take a look at the payment link. And now let's actually try and purchase that product and check that everything is working as intended. So I'll just put in test email. I'll put in a real GitHub ID that I have to ensure that I get access. This is the test number from Stripe. And we can pay. So once this payment goes through, we should be able to see on the server that everything is working. So if we go back over here, I've run Heroku logs tails. So Heroku logs tail. That just shows you all of the logs. And you can see here that the GitHub username, basically the webhook was received and the GitHub username was granted access to the GitHub repository. And in parallel to that, an email has been sent showing that access has been granted. So here you can see access granted to GitHub Repo Mart for user Ronan Arig. And actually this email step is important because if there is a bug, for example, somebody puts in the wrong GitHub username, you kind of need to know that the access granting has failed, because then you need to email the user and tell them, hey, could you send over your correct username? So you'll receive an email either if it's successful or if it's failed. So it's nice to know you've made a sale or that there's an issue that you need to fix up. And that brings me to the end of the demo on setting up Heroku. You can see it probably takes about 20 minutes to get set up. A few other little things you can configure. You can put your own custom domain name if you like within Heroku from the dashboard. If you need to change any environment variables, you can do so using a Heroku config set command, or you can again update it from the Heroku dashboard. And just as I said earlier on, there's one other point around making payment links. So the way that we get the username is by using a custom field within the payment link. And it's very important that when you create the link, you have a very specific syntax for what you call that field. You'll have noticed I typed in enter your GitHub username and then e.g. Joe Blogs. And this is how the code is set up. If I just show you here within the webhook itself, you can see that it's searching for this string here, which matches exactly without spaces and parentheses. So it's very important during setup that you use the exact string when you're specifying a custom field. As I mentioned, you can run this server locally or on a Ubuntu server. Here are the commands for cloning and installing. This is how you install the requirements that are needed if you want to just directly install them on the server. Heroku does this automatically when you deploy with Heroku, and then you would simply run Python run. That's it for the demo of setting up a server for automating access to GitHub repos. I will be expanding on that server to include the ability to automate access to Hugging Face datasets and models. So keep an eye out for that in the near future. In the meantime, let me know if you have any questions about getting a small business going, selling access to repos, whether that be on the Access creation side or just on the marketing or product creation side in general. Cheers, folks.